You're 8 years old, the sun hasn't risen yet, the morning air is cold, and the sound that wakes the village isn't roosters, it's screams. You run to the door and see the torches, the spears. The Ottoman Empire doesn't ask permission. They break through the door, they break into your story. Your father trying to speak, and his voice turning into silence. They're coming, not for gold, not for food, they're coming for you. In seconds, the world you knew ends. Dirty hands drag you across the floor. Smoke floods the air. Your mother's face disappears in the flames. You scream. No one answers, because those who scream too much get beaten. That night, your name was erased. What happens to you isn't bad luck. It's method, and you've become part of the most profitable machine. For more than 6 centuries, an empire that spanned 3 continents, controlled the fate of millions, and learned to turn lives into numbers. Behind the gilded domes, the palaces, and the sultans that history turned into legend, there was a marketplace that sold people as if they were spices. The official papers called it property, but what they were selling were lives. The sources aren't legends. They're Ottoman administrative records, reports by diplomats and travelers, and documents confirmed by archaeology. These weren't excesses or cultural misunderstandings. They were institutional policies. People turned into merchandise. Girls and women turned into items in a market that ran with the efficiency of a modern corporation. If you think history is just what school tells you, subscribe now. We go where the books won't, and you help this work continue. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Let's start with the scale. In Constantinople, in the 16th century, the heart of the Ottoman Empire, this was the epicenter of the industry. On every corner, a woman being bought. Every morning, a girl being taken. Historical estimates point to 1 in 5 people being enslaved. In an empire with nearly 1 million inhabitants, that means hundreds of thousands of captives, most of them women and girls. Almost every affluent household owned enslaved women. Even middle-class families had at least one. Owning a woman was a symbol of status, morality, and power. The most famous market was Avret Pazara, the women's bazaar. There, girls were displayed naked, appraised like cattle. It operated openly from the mid-15th century until 1908, in the heart of Istanbul. Yes, when the United States was fighting the Civil War and Europe was entering the Industrial Revolution, this market was still operating. The state didn't just tolerate it, it regulated it, taxed every transaction, and created detailed laws about the possession and use of human beings, all with tables, ledgers, stamps, and above all, profit. There, women were displayed naked or half-naked, forced to smile, while buyers examined teeth, skin, eyes, and docility. Scribes recorded everything: age, origin, appearance, price, and level of obedience. None of this was clandestine. It was organized economy. The state taxed every sale, issued licenses to merchants, and kept ownership ledgers for human property. Even Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, issued decrees on slave taxation and resale. The empire didn't just allow slavery, it structured it. By the 17th century, there was a dedicated bureaucracy for trafficking, transport permits, inspections, stamps, and receipts, many still preserved in Ottoman archives, imperial seals intact. But where did these women come from? You may be asking yourself. From everywhere the Ottoman shadow reached, and even from beyond its borders, from the Caucasus Mountains, where snow hid the cries of stolen daughters, from the Balkans, where entire villages vanished overnight, from Ukraine and southern Russia, where mothers whispered to their children to run, knowing no one would escape, from Greece and Hungary, whose people had once resisted Ottoman expansion, only to become its human currency, from North Africa, where desert caravans carried women across sand and silence. The empire saw borders not as barriers, but as maps of opportunity, each frontier a new vein of flesh to mine. Among the most efficient suppliers were the Crimean Tatars, Ottoman vassals who transformed kidnapping into an industry. They called it the harvest of the steppe. Every spring, when the fields were full and the men were far away at work, they descended on Polish, Moldavian, and Ukrainian villages. They moved like a storm, fast, organized, merciless. By dawn, houses were burning, men were dead, and the young and the beautiful were bound in chains. The raids were so regular that border communities began to treat them as a seasonal inevitability. Church bells no longer called for prayer. They rang to warn of the next hunt. Historians estimate that over the course of 3 centuries, as many as 2 to 3 million captives were taken by Tatar raiders and funneled into the Ottoman slave system. Most never saw their homes again. Those who did were often ransomed for impossible sums. Families selling everything, even their land, just to bring one daughter home. The Polish chronicler Samuel Twardowski described the aftermath of a raid in 1648. You could follow the Tatars by the trail of smoke and by the echo of children's cries carried by the wind. Once captured, women were marched for weeks toward the Crimean ports of Kiev, Azov, and Kaffa, where Ottoman merchants waited with silver and ledgers. From there, slave ships crossed the Black Sea, their decks packed with human cargo bound for Istanbul, Smyrna, Cairo, and Damascus. A Venetian envoy wrote in 1675 about the market at Kiev. Hundreds of Christian women, naked under the sun, stand while men debate their price, as if they were mares or cattle. Their eyes are empty, emptier than the pockets of those who can't afford them. Even earlier, in 1453, during the fall of Constantinople, the Byzantine chronicler George Francis wrote of the unthinkable, how, inside Hagia Sophia, once the grandest church in Christendom, men, women, and children were violated beneath the very dome meant to echo prayers. Monasteries were looted, nuns were dragged from sanctuaries, loaded onto ships, and auctioned across the empire. These were not random outbursts of cruelty. They were part of a deliberate system, military campaigns designed not only to conquer land, but to harvest people. If this dive into forgotten archives makes sense to you, leave a like. This shows the algorithm that these voices will not be erased again. Some women chose death over what awaited them. They leapt into wells, into fire, into rivers, but most had no choice. Children were ripped from their mothers. Young girls disappeared into caravans bound for distant cities. Bodies were left hanging from trees or scattered along the roads, a silent warning to those who thought of resisting Ottoman power. The empire didn't just consume territory, it consumed humanity itself. The next point in the video is the hierarchy of skin. Within this machine, color and origin set the price and the fate. Officially, religious discourse claimed that Islam makes no distinction between races, but the sales ledgers told another story. Circassian and Georgian women from the Caucasus were the most expensive, light skin, light eyes, fought over by sultans and viziers. Syrian and Armenian women occupied the middle tier. African women from Sudan, Ethiopia, and the Sahara were sold as the lowest class, used for domestic labor or sexual exploitation. A Circassian concubine could cost 6,000 kurush, the price of an entire house. An African woman, 2,000 kurush, the price of a horse. The rarest reached 80,000 kurush, fortunes capable of sustaining armies. It wasn't chaos, it was a market. Merchants tracked demand and adjusted prices by age, beauty, and utility. The imperial treasury took its cut. Every tier paid a tax. In the Ottoman system, an enslaved woman was the legal property of her owner. Under the Hanafi school of Islamic law, a man could have relations with his female slaves. If he acknowledged the child was considered legitimate and the woman gained the status of Walad, mother of the child, and could not be sold until the master's death. It was a legal distortion that turned rape into inheritance. Jurists like Ebu Suud Effendi, the leading theologian of the 16th century, issued fatwas declaring the sexual use of non-Muslim captives lawful. Some opinions even claimed that killing a slave woman was not a sin if done without cruelty. The message was clear. The female body was a field of power. A free woman could go to court, an enslaved woman could not. This wasn't contradiction. It was a method of control. And then, the harem, the most distorted and misunderstood symbol in Ottoman history. Western art painted it as paradise, silk cushions, soft music, scented gardens. Painters like Jean-Léon Gérôme and Ingres turned it into fantasy, a world of beauty and desire. But the records from the Topkapi imperial harem tell a very different story, a prison disguised as luxury. Behind the marble courtyards and gold lattices, the air was heavy, still and silent. The smell of rose oil masked something else, the quiet despair of hundreds of women who would never again see the world beyond the palace walls. Between the 16th and 17th centuries, the imperial harem housed anywhere from 400 to over 1,200 women at a time. The overwhelming majority would never lay eyes on the sultan. They weren't queens or lovers, they were property. They scrubbed floors, carried water, dressed the favored concubines, and maintained the endless rituals of palace life. The hierarchy was absolute and unforgiving. At the top stood the Valid Sultan, the sultan's mother, a woman who wielded enormous political power. Beneath her came the Cadans, official consorts, the favorites, the odalisques, and finally the servants, who were little more than slaves. New arrivals, often girls as young as 6 or 7, were stripped of their names, their language, and their faith. They were given new identities, new religions, and new destinies, all defined by obedience. They learned poetry, music, calligraphy, and dance, not as culture, but as conditioning. Every note they played, every smile they gave, was part of their training to please a master they might never meet. The older women, known as Kalfa, served as overseers, former slaves who had survived long enough to become enforcers of the same system that once broke them. They drilled the girls in posture, silence, and submission. Those who resisted were punished. Days of isolation, public humiliation, lashes, or sale to a public brothel if they were deemed unmanageable. The Topkap archives record disciplinary measures with chilling precision. Notes written by eunuch supervisors marking disobedience as though it were a bookkeeping error. The same bureaucratic hand that managed the empire's finances also managed the lives and deaths of women. To outsiders, the harem was a world of fragrance and music. Inside, it was a machine, one that turned childhood into servitude and silence into survival. What the West called pleasure was, in truth, systematic suffering, and every silk curtain hid another story of a woman who had been taught to smile through captivity. The few who gained freedom never returned to who they were. They struggled to trust, to feel, to exist. They carried traumas we'd now call severe disorders. They survived on the outside, dead on the inside. The empire didn't offer forgiveness. It offered oblivion. If this video is opening your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear it. The story changes when we talk about it out loud. The logistics of horror. From the 17th to the 19th century, Ottoman trafficking became an international network. Ships crossed the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, carrying human cargo, registered as Esir Malı, slave goods. Caravans ran routes from Sudan to Damascus, Crimea to Bursa, Libya to Istanbul. Merchants kept catalogs with details: age, body type, skills, virginity, temperament. There were warranties: virgin, fertile, docile, and even return policies if the woman fell ill. The bureaucracy was frighteningly modern. Receipts, seals, stamps, import taxes. Every scream became a document. The British abolitionist James Richardson, in 1840, wrote after visiting Tripoli, "I saw girls the age of my own daughter, branded, numbered, and sold before noon." The journey to the bazaars was hell. Women were chained in long lines called coffles, forced to walk hundreds of kilometers. Those who collapsed were left to die. Those who gave birth watched their infants killed before their eyes, not out of cruelty, but for efficiency. Upon arrival, they were taken to the Baba Humayun Gate in Istanbul, where officials assessed and taxed each one before the sale. Auctions were spectacles of humiliation. Naked bodies, invasive exams, buyers discussing sexual potential in clinical terms, and at the end a scribe wrote buyer's name, amount paid, condition of the product. The markets were officially banned in 1908 under pressure from Western powers, but they continued in secret for decades. Even after the empire's collapse in 1922, the practice survived in brothels and private harems. In Istanbul's archives, thousands of receipts, contracts, and inventories still rest, ruins not of stone, but of paper, and each line holds a silence that was never broken. What was life like after slavery? Empires fall, but systems, they adapt. When the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1922, the official decrees claimed slavery had ended. The markets were closed, the ledgers sealed, the taxes abolished, but the trade didn't vanish. It simply changed its name. Former slave brokers became matchmakers. Old harems turned into private houses of pleasure, run by the same families who once traded women legally. The language of ownership shifted. Servant, protector, guardian. The structure remained. In the early 1930s, British diplomats still reported sightings of African and Circassian women working in conditions indistinguishable from bondage in the Arabian Peninsula and Anatolia. Some were descendants of slaves who had never been told they were free. Freedom, after all, isn't declared. It has to be believed. Even the architecture of Istanbul kept the memory alive. Behind many carved lattice windows that tourists admire today, women once watched the world through holes small enough to see, but never to escape. The domes and corridors of Topkapi whisper not just of power, but of the silence it demanded. And the most chilling legacy wasn't physical, it was psychological. Generations grew up in societies where obedience was virtue, hierarchy was sacred, and the female body was a political instrument. The idea that some were born to serve didn't die. It evolved, hidden in traditions, stories, and expectations that survived long after the chains were gone. Even now, scholars trace Ottoman slave bloodlines in family archives, marriage records, and DNA studies. They find traces of forgotten names, women who vanished into the system, yet left echoes in the faces of their descendants. The empire is gone, but its shadows still move, in language, in memory, in silence. What does this endless night teach us? That civilization can live with the unacceptable, so long as it's profitable and well documented, that marble walls can hide screams, and that forgetting is the final stage of violence. If you've made it this far, you already know this channel doesn't romanticize empires. We face them. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and comment which city you're watching from. Tell us which story you want us to unearth next, because memory isn't a pastime, it's resistance. And before we end, go back to the beginning. You're 8 years old. The door didn't open. It fell. It wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning of the story they tried to write for you. Today, we give the name back, and the sound of that door turning to dust finally gets an answer.